What's up, guys? Round one is over, and I'm going to try to keep a straight face, not look too happy or too sad, and spoil the outcome. You read that correctly. They did change the rules on me, and I will explain that story when we get to the moment in the game where I found that out. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. I will promise I will get to that eventually. Before I jump right into the game, I just want to tell you this is a 9-round tournament. It's 40 in 90, sudden death 30. So what that means is you have to make 40 moves in 90 minutes. And if you accomplish that, then you get an extra 30 minutes added on. And then in addition to that, every time you make a move, you just always get 30 seconds added to your clock. So it's pretty long time control, although 40 moves is a lot. And so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of games don't actually make it to that second time control. You can see my rating is 2130. That's my FIDE rating. So my USCF is a little bit higher, 22 something, but I do want to get my FIDE rating up. I was playing against Craig Gustafsson, I think is how you say his last name. He was not FIDE rated, so this was 1650 was his USCF. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into the game. So I was black, and here we go. So he played D4, and some of you know my struggles with D4 as black. I'm always questioning, what should I play? Should I play Knight of 6? Should I play D5? It's just a struggle, and I still haven't figured it out. So I decided, to play Knight of 6 and then see if he played C4, and if he did, then I would decide what to do. Sometimes, they can play Knight of 3, Bishop F4, try to do London. I wasn't sure. He did play C4. And then I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and play the Benko Gambit. Now, Benko Gambit, as far as I know, I've never played before in a tournament game. So this is my first tournament game ever playing it, I believe. But C5, D5, B5. So this is the Benko Gambit. And the Benko Gambit is, it's a different type of gambit in the sense that most gambits, you give away a pawn to get quick development and usually like an attacking aggressive position. The Benko Gambit, you're basically giving away a pawn permanently to get long-term positional pressure. And so he actually took, this is the main line, A6, captures, and takes. And so we give up 2 pawns in exchange for 1, but now we have these open A and B files that we can use for our rooks and our queens, our rooks and our queen, and we have some long-term pressure along these files. And then additionally, this bishop's pretty annoying, and a lot of times you end up trading it off, which also can give white a little bit of problems. And so that's what happened. We kind of just followed the main line. And he was like blitzing out almost all of these moves. Like he wasn't even thinking. And so I was getting a little bit worried when this was happening, because I'm thinking like, okay, either he's not thinking or he's played this before and he knows at least, the main line. And honestly, all I know about Benko Gambit after this position right here that we got is that you try to put your rooks and your queen somewhere in some way on the A and B files. And then you try to maneuver your knights around and hopefully get some pressure with the bishop. And a lot of times maybe your knight can hop to like E5 and eventually you can maybe push C4 and go to D3, something like that. Okay, that's all I knew. Other than that, I really knew nothing. And like I said, he didn't even think. He played A4 and he still hasn't thought at all at this point. So I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure the main line is like Queen B6 or maybe Queen A5. I don't actually know. But I wanted to do something that maybe was a little bit different. So I played Queen to B8 and I'm thinking, this is kind of a different way to go about putting my pieces over here. I was going to put my rook on C8, and then that way it supports the pawn that I can push forward, potentially hop the knight in, and try to take advantage of these weak squares. Okay, so I played Queen B8, and he actually told me after the game that this is like one of the main lines, and he's quite familiar with this position. So it made sense. He was playing very quickly. Queen C2, and rook C8. Okay, and now knight to B5. And this knight is very annoying. Okay, it's defended by this pawn. So one of the things that I wanted to do was play knight to B6. And my idea behind playing knight B6 is that I thought initially when I was looking at this is that I could take here. So like, let's just say white plays a random move like rook over. I thought I could take here with the idea that if rook takes, then I'm going to take the knight. So I actually win back the pawn. And then I'm left with this isolated B pawn I can target. And I thought that was pretty good. The problem is, if we go back, as soon as I take here, he doesn't have to take me right away. He can throw in this move, knight takes D6. And then I have to take it. And then he takes my knight. And so I actually don't win a pawn because I just, lost this one, right? So once I saw that, I was like, well, that's probably not any good, because if I go knight B6 and I can't actually take on A4, I don't really have a whole lot of threats. I can't go there. And even if I push the pawn, well, then the knight, you know, that I wanted to go to c5 to come in, can't do it. So I'm like, okay, if I can't go knight b6, what can I do? And so I came up with this idea, knight to e8. And the idea here is that I want to just come over here and trade off this annoying knight. Now, the engine doesn't like this quite as much. It actually liked b6, knight b6, but it's not a bad move. But so this was my idea. Now, right at this moment in the game, okay, this is where I have to tell you that they changed the rules. So I'm thinking, I play this move, and the tournament director was like walking around, and he like comes over, leans over, and I'll show you, I was writing down my moves right here on my notation pad, my little notation book, okay, it's got all these pages in it. He goes like this, he says, you can't use this. And he hands me this piece of paper, notation sheet, okay, and he says, you have to use this. Now, it's been a while, obviously, but growing up, I always just used a notation book like this. Of course, I've like used sheets like this, but I always find it annoying because they kind of like get lost. And then you're like, where was that game that I played? I don't have it. So when you have a book like this, you know, you can just, everything is kept track. Anyway, apparently that's illegal. I don't know if it's because it's a FIDE rated event and they make you use these like not double-sided, the ones that have the yellow sheet behind so you can peel it off after and give them the copy, whatever that carbon copy or whatever that's called. So I guess you have to use that apparently. So he tells me that and he's like, you got to copy over your moves. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I did that in the middle of the game, kind of awkward. But yeah, apparently that's a thing. I don't know if it's always been like that or something changed in the last 7-8 years. But anyway, I was a little bit surprised, but we made it and got all my moves copied over onto this thing. So anyway, knight to e8, bishop to d2. So this guy's playing really good. He hasn't made any mistakes so far, and this is actually a good idea. He's going to go to c3 and then trade off my really strong bishop here. And so I'm not going to have all that pressure that you normally would have in the Benko. So I'm like, well, I got to keep going with the plan here. Knight here. He took it, I took it, and then bishop c3. Okay, so I went ahead and doubled up. So I have the battery here. I have some pressure here. So like now I'm kind of threatening, you know, to take here. And then if like pawn takes, my rook can come in. And I might be able to get some nice counterplay along the second rank. So he trades it off and rook over. Okay, so this is a pretty typical position in the Benko Gambit, I think. Now, one thing that I will say, my queen feels like it's misplaced on b8. A lot of the other lines where you go to b6 or a5, you have ideas of potentially going to a6, and you can kind of get control over this diagonal, and then it helps your knight out, and it even supports c4. And I don't know, I just felt like my queen here just was a little bit too passive. Like it's only really doing one thing, controlling this file, as opposed to if it's over here where it's kind of doing multiple things, right? So I think I need to look into the Benko a little bit more and see what's the deal with that, because it just didn't feel quite right. But I'm like, okay, so how do I make progress here? He's got everything defended. You know, normally this is the idea to bring the knight in, but I can't do that right now because the queen's covering it. So I played rook b4, and my point was that now I'm threatening to play c4 and bring my knight in. And I'm also kind of keeping an eye on these pawns so that the queen kind of has to stay guarding them. At least that was my idea. So he plays knight here. Good move, because he's going to, you know, stop me from playing c4 and then also bring his knight in, which is a really nice square for the knight. So I played h5, and h5 was kind of, so like I said, up until this point, he hasn't thought too much. Now he started thinking a little bit more at this point in the game after rook b4, but up until this, he hadn't really thought much. I don't really feel like I even challenged him. And so I'm like, okay, let's play h5, because if he lets me, I'm going to play h4, and maybe my queen can actually swing over this way. Knight can come in, and we might be able to get some sort of attack on the king side, right? Because it didn't seem like I was making much progress on the queen side. So I played h5. He played h4. And another benefit of this little, you know, h5, h4 idea is that now I can play knight e5, and if the pawn tries to chase my knight away, I've got a nice hole on g4 that normally wouldn't be there because h3. So I'm like, okay, let's do that. b3. And now I played queen c8. And the point here is that I had to do something, and I was thinking maybe the queen can come over to g4 at some point. We can start to get pressure on the king. I was also thinking maybe I can come over to a6, and this diagonal, like I talked about earlier, looked pretty nice and potentially could help support the knight to go in there. So kind of a dual purpose move, but he plays knight c4, and I think this is a pretty good move. The engine says I should take, but I really felt like if I take, he takes. I didn't see how I was going to win this game. Like, I just didn't see it. He's got this pawn still, which is not what I want. Like, yeah, maybe I can hold on for a draw, but this is not ideal. So I really didn't want to take there. So I played knight to g4, just trying to keep the pieces on the board and complicate things a little bit. All right, so a5, good move because, and actually I didn't even think about this idea because I thought, okay, if the pawn ever moves forward, I was thinking it's going to become weak and it's going to become a target because now it's not defended by the b pawn. The issue is it does create an immediate threat. The knight's going to come to b6, and that's a fork on these guys, right? So, and there's other reasons why this is kind of annoying too, because it cuts off my pieces from this file. And anyway, it gets a little bit crazy here in a little bit. So tricky move. I played queen to a6. I didn't want to let the pawn keep going, and I also wanted to put more pressure here and then potentially keep an eye on this diagonal. So rook here. Now, at this point in the game, I was getting a little bit worried. And the reason I was getting worried is because I'm like, okay, what if I just, go here and keep my rook defended? And then I was thinking, well, he's going to take it. I can recapture here. And then what if he just goes rook a1 and then comes up here with this other rook and does the same thing and just trades off the rooks? I was like, what am I even going to do? Like, I don't even see any way to make progress. So if I just do a random move, he's going to come up. If I take this, even though these pawns are kind of ugly, there's still two pawns that are defended and my queen can't really do anything. Yeah, maybe it's just going to be a draw, but I don't want to draw, right? So it's like, I didn't see anything there. So I decided, you know what? I need to keep as many pieces on the board as I can. Otherwise, we're just going to trade everything off and get a draw, which is not what I want. So I played rook back to keep the pressure. And this way it allows there to be some tactics still available, right? If we trade off everything, there's just not going to be anything. So, okay, b4. This is kind of what I was hoping because b4 allows me to play this move with a nice pin. Now the pawn can't take because the rook is going to get captured on b1. At this point, there's kind of like two main things that I need to consider. He might play knight b6. He might play knight a3. And then kind of in addition to that, there's this queen c3 check move, which could happen at any moment, and it might be useful or it might not be useful. So I kind of have to just be aware of that. So I was kind of expecting knight b6 maybe right away, or maybe even knight a3. On knight b6, I was planning on just taking and then trying to recapture this pawn. So for example, something like this looked okay to me. And then on knight a3, I'm just going to take the pawn, right? Like this, probably like this, and then I don't know, I can't take this right away, but now I have my own pawn, and it's kind of tricky, but I think now I'm starting to get some nice counterplay. So that's kind of what I was expecting to happen. Now, he was getting a little bit low on time, and as soon as I played here, he went ahead and threw in the check right away, which, okay. So I played f6. I wanted to leave my knight here because I saw some tactics along this square if he ever tried to chase it away. And so I thought f6 was the way to go. And now I was expecting knight to a3. I was going to take. And basically, like, let's say rook takes. I'm just going to take. And then I have this nice move, queen a5, and it pins the rook to the queen so that I don't lose this rook here. And so after something like, I don't know, knight c2, we can keep playing. And I feel like I'm at least equal. Maybe I have a slight advantage now because this knight seems to be better than his knight. So I was okay with that. And that's kind of what I thought we were going to what was going to happen. But he actually finally made a mistake. The guy was playing really, really well the whole game. He finally made a big mistake. Knight to b6. That's a blunder. If you want to pause the video and figure out what's the move that black should play, I'll let you do that for a second. All right, well, the move is actually capturing the knight with either of these rooks, and the idea, I think I captured it this way, and the idea is the pawn is pinned, and if it takes, then I just take the rook. So he actually resigned after this move, and I won the first game, my first tournament game in 8 years. We won. So honestly, it didn't go as smoothly as I, was hoping. But I talked to him after the game, and he said he had actually recently played the Benko Gambit, didn't know what to do, And then he like talked to his coach, and his coach basically showed him the line, and so he was pretty comfortable after that, knowing what to do. So, and I could tell like the guy was playing everything perfectly. So I kind of walked into that, but was able to, you know, create a little bit of complications here and came out on top. So good first round. I'm happy for that. We have 2 more tomorrow, so I'm gonna get some sleep and get ready and see. I'm expecting to have a really strong player tomorrow potentially. I think I might get one of the International Masters or GMs. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you guys for watching. As always, stay sharp, play smart, take care.